So let's talk briefly about synchronizing audio within Adobe Premiere. Now, I'm sure a lot of you will have more than one camera, and I also know that a lot of people who watch this channel use Zoom recorders or the little Tascam ones. A lot of DSLRs don't have particularly good audio, and this is a great way of getting professional audio. And I have here camera A, camera B, which both had onboard audio, and I had a Zoom pocket recorder. I've literally just done this in my office just to demonstrate. What's interesting about this is that the Zoom has been set to 44.1, yet the other ones are on 48. Now, first things first, I would always recommend matching the bit rate and the audio, but I was curious what would happen with this if they actually had different formats. So let's drag the cameras on. So we've got our camera A here. I'm going to keep the sequence settings and you can see the waveform there. I'm then going to drag camera B and put the audio thereabout, and I'm going to grab the Zoom audio. And one thing I've learned with Adobe is it has this fantastic automatic synchronization feature, but a lot of the time you get an error message saying it can't do it. And one thing I found that helps your success in this is to, instead of just clapping a single time at the beginning of the file, I think clap 3 times in a row. It seems to be a more unique value, and for whatever reason I find the sync works much better with that. So that bear in mind, all else I've done is I've just dragged down, expanded the audio waveforms so you can see them better, and I've used the zoom in tool here so that I can see them in more detail. Now what I'm going to do is then click and drag around all the waveforms, right click and click on synchronize. And I'm then going to select mix down from them and go OK. And as you can see, it's done the job perfectly. Interestingly here as well, it's done a seamless conversion of the 44.1 to the baseline of this composition. If we go to sequence settings, you can see that the sample rate is set to 48 kilohertz. And Adobe has converted the 44.1 off the Zoom into 48. But as I said before, it would have been preferable not to have done that. It would be much better to record at 48 kilohertz on the Zoom as well. Either way, it's done a very good job. Now let's just click on these and just make them all the same length, get rid of the rubbish at the front and drag them to the start of the timeline. And let's say what would happen if, supposing the second camera hadn't synced and it stayed like that. I don't think it takes a genius to realize you can just drag around this timeline to get it to match. And I also think it's fairly obvious that when you press your playhead and then zoom into that area, you have a decent amount of resolution to then move this to where it needs to be. So let's have a look. And as you can see, it's pretty much bang on. Other things to note when you're dragging around clips, if you press the S key, then you take the snap feature off, which means you get much nicer resolution in terms of moving it around. The other thing to remember is enable show audio time units. The reason for this is if you zoom in, you can zoom into a much higher resolution on the waveform, which allows you to be much more precise with your cuts. If I just now go and take that off, you can see that the zoomed in resolution is nowhere near when you've got show audio timeline enabled. So if you need to be super precise with your moving around and your cuts and all that with your audio, just remember to enable show audio time units. But hopefully if you do your 3 claps, loop round the clips, right click, synchronize, mix down, OK, it should work fine. And one final tip, when you import, say, let's suppose you've done a long meeting or a news event or something like that, maybe 15-20 minutes, and you've got 3 cameras on that. You need to let the audio do what's called conforming within Adobe Premiere, and you'll see a little progress bar here slowly creeping through on each of the separate audio tracks. It's not possible to synchronize the audio until it's done its conforming, so you need to sit that one out. And for me, that means that's the perfect opportunity to put the kettle on and have a cup of coffee.